Hi, my name is Seth Embry, and I'm the Senior Advisor and Chief Strategist at the Housing Authority of the Birmingham District. April is Fair Housing Month, and we are proud to be an organization that embraces and furthers fair housing in our area and in our programs. So this month, we're happy to bring you some conversation with folks who are doing the hard work of helping members of our community find housing, secure housing in the Birmingham area. I hope you enjoy these conversations and stay tuned for more information. Okay, Carlos, welcome. Thank you for joining me. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Carlos Aleman. I am the Chief Executive Officer of the Hispanic and Immigrant Center of Alabama.
Excellent. How long have you been in that role?
I've been in that role now 3 years, and I've been with the organization 7.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining me to talk about our critical conversation series when it comes to fair housing. April is Fair Housing Month. The Housing Authority of Birmingham District is a champion of fair housing. We believe in the Fair Housing Act, the values of non-discrimination and equal opportunity and access for all, regardless of your background, to housing. So I wanted to have this conversation with you to talk about the population that you serve and access to and housing needs here in Birmingham.
Sure.
So can you talk a little bit about HICA?
Yeah, HICA has been around now 26 years. We're the longest established Hispanic serving nonprofit in the state of Alabama. We do that through 5 programs that focus on family services, immigration legal services, education and career pathways, community economic development, and we have a loan fund as well.
Okay.
And within the community economic development, we have a housing program.
All right. So talk more about that.
Yeah, we have the only bilingual HUD certified housing counselor in the state of Alabama. So that means we help first generation immigrants navigate systems, understand how to go about buying a house. We also do some tenant advocacy and want to make sure that folks can overcome the barriers, whether they be down payment assistance or closing costs or what have you, and understand why a 30-year mortgage is normal in our country. That's not normal in Latin America.
Okay.
And so asking people to go into debt for 30 years is just like, and I think we're so used to it and we take it for granted.
Sure.
But if you tell you're going to be in debt for 30 years, that's crazy.
It is. We do it, but it's crazy. So talk about the population that you serve.
Mm-hmm.
So is this, you serve folks all across the state?
Yeah, we are a statewide organization. Our primary footprint though is in Central Alabama. We're in Jefferson, Shelby, Chilton, St. Clair, and Walker County.
Okay.
Right.
And so for the population that you serve, obviously you talked about just the unfamiliarity with our financial system in a way, right? But does that go beyond lending to banking and other access to credit and things of that nature?
Yeah, all of that, right? I think that, our credit functions differently in Latin America than it does in the United States. And so a lot of what we do is financial literacy. So folks understand how to leverage credit, how to leverage debt so that they can build assets, right? And that requires quite a bit of work. If you think about the community that we serve, Alabama has a relatively young Latino population.
Okay.
We're not New York, Florida, California, or Texas, right? The Hispanic population started growing here in the 1990s. According to the U.S. Census, you had about 26,000 folks who identified as Hispanic in 1990. In 2023, according to the American Community Survey, we have close to 300,000.
Wow.
So you've seen a tenfold increase in a period of 30 years. But that also means is that you have a generation of folks who primarily speak Spanish. Now, the folks who came in the 90s and the 2000s, now they're having kids, right? And those kids are growing up in Alabama. So you have the first real generation of folks who are bilingual and bicultural, now just graduating college, entering the professional workforce. And that's changing some of the dynamics. But the primary population that we serve is that first generation immigrant population that just recently arrived to the United States.
Yeah. So in terms of fair housing, right, one of the things that the Act purports to do is eliminate discrimination for sale and rental housing for all in this country, regardless of your national origin, your ethnicity, your familial status, race, things of that nature. Are there particular types of or instances of discrimination, housing discrimination, that kind of your folks bring to you all that you try to problem solve through?
Well, you think about language access being the primary barrier that we have to overcome. According to Title VI, anyone that receives federal funding has to provide some sort of reasonable accommodations for language, but oftentimes folks ignore that. And so we have to sometimes come in behind people and say, well, you should be providing some sort of support in language. And so that remains the biggest barrier. Then you have economic barriers. And then, if we're honest, if you have folks whose status is, if they're not US citizens, if they're not lawful permanent residents, then that creates other sorts of barriers, which makes them vulnerable because then they can be exploited by people who are looking to take advantage of them.
Okay. And so that's certainly a kind of, if not discrimination, predatory practices that
Absolutely.
the community faces.
And I think that, we have fallen victims to the histories and legacies of redlining as well, right? As to where people are expected to be and where they can go. I think people would be surprised to know that nationwide, the Latino population has high rates of homeownership. There's nearly 48% of folks have some sort of home ownership. At the same time, they tend to be in vulnerable dwellings, right? So if you think about Alabama, trailer parks are filled with folks who have bought these homes, but they're very vulnerable to natural disasters and sorts of flooding, tornadoes, what have you. So that makes them also vulnerable. And oftentimes they find themselves there though because they tend to also be primarily at low to moderate income families.
Yeah. And so obviously the housing authority, one thing that we specialize in is providing housing to low and moderate income families. We serve the poor of Birmingham, both by statute, because, by statute, we serve very low and extremely low income families. And also because there's not always easy pathways of assured opportunity for very low income people who also have low educational attainment, whose parents might not have literacy, who also have, adverse health conditions, disabilities, things like that. So talk about economic opportunity for the families that you serve and how you try to help them along that ladder to self-sufficiency and prosperity.
Sure. We have a various program that are around wealth generation. Like, so we have an education career pathways program. We want to make sure that young people understand what their post-secondary educational opportunities are, right? Whether they be community college, university, workforce. Once we've established that, we also want them to be able to start their own businesses if that's what they would like to do. So we have a financial literacy, financial capability program that helps people open small businesses. Since 2013, we've helped about 200 individuals obtain their business licenses. So we are able to then see them go from a situation where they didn't have control of their financial futures or destinies, and now they have more of that. But what we saw was that they couldn't grow. So in 2019, we started a loan fund that we call the Camino Loan Fund that provides small business loans to immigrant entrepreneurs. Since 2019, we've been able to deploy $850,000 across 72 loans, and we've only had one default of less than $3,000. So we've had tremendous success. And actually, matter of fact, just today, we were officially certified as a CDFI.
Oh, great.
And so we're really excited about that. That's going to provide us more opportunities to get capital out the door.
Sure. CDFIs are getting into affordable housing
Yeah.
as well. So there's avenue to partnership with the housing authority in the future. So I want to close out on this question and then give you the opportunity to tell folks how to find you and your organization. So right now in our country,
Yeah.
in this country, right, this is for many people, a perilous moment, particularly for immigrant populations or folks. You talked about being a HUD certified housing agency. So anyone doing business with the federal government,
Sure.
right? We don't know what the future holds. But you are, and because you're committed to your mission. So talk about some things that you're hopeful for in the future and some things that you want to do to expand the services that you offer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we have a very dynamic community. I don't think people realize that. I think that when you talk about immigrants, there's a lot of conversations that focus on the border, right? And then you have these images that dominate the media. But the fact of the matter is that this is a community that's very persevering, right? That has already done the hardest thing that anyone will ever do, which means they left their countries in search of an opportunity, often not knowing the language, often not knowing anyone else here. And if they've already been able to do that and been able to survive here, then if you unlock barriers to prosperity, then you have a opportunity to lift up not just that community, but the entire community that they're a part of. So I think that folks need to figure out how to tap in, right, and help us grow, right? Because in 20 years, the population of Alabama will be at least 10% Hispanic. In 40 years, it'll be 20% Hispanic. And so how are we getting ready as institutions and government entities to serve that population? Because if you think about housing, if you think about workforce, if you think about entrepreneurship, these are all opportunities, and we're going to all have to figure out how to work together so that we can be stronger together.
Right, as a region and as a state.
Absolutely.
So, tell people how they can find out more about HICA and your organization.
Sure. Come to hikaalabama.org, or you can call it at 205-942-5505, and come visit us at one of our events. We have several fundraising events, whether it be a pig roast, whether it be a baseball game, and then we're very well known for our tamale sale
Very
every
well.
year.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, Carlos, thank you very much for
Yes,
this.
sir. Appreciate you.